So, my name is Stephanie Simmons. I'm the managing partner of Profitability Works. We are a consulting firm that works with businesses in the construction industry to help them realign culture, re-engineer execution in order to improve their profitability. We're from Florida, and in Florida there is a lot of construction happening, and I pass billboards every day begging people to come on at the HVAC companies, at the construction companies, at the plumbers, et cetera. And so, you know, this has been going on in the construction industry for a while, but there is something that can be done now that you can implement in your business to help retain the employees that you have now and to start recruiting more. And that's what we're going to discuss today. My background is I have been in the construction industry since the late 1990s. I have been in sales. I have been in the field. I have done executive level roles and large P&L roles from very small companies all the way up to globally publicly traded companies. So what I'm talking about today, I've implemented myself, and I've helped a lot of clients implement themselves. So this is a trend from the last 10 years from the US Department of Labor about people in the construction industry that are quitting. It's not just the frontline employees. This is everybody who works in the construction industry, but we can see the trend over the last 10 years going from about 1.5% of people just quitting the industry up to about 2.5% with the first part of this year. And hopefully they'll get that back up so we can see it. Now, this has been in the news recently. They're calling us the Great Resignation, okay? Microsoft did a study that 41% of the global workforce would consider leaving their current employer in the next year. That's a lot, okay? And what they found out was that leaders were really out of touch with their employees, and they really needed a wake-up call. So what I'm seeing a lot in the construction industry is when the shutdowns happened, the office workers went home to work, and the field continued doing execution where they could. There was a lot of communication breakdown that was happening. That's not unusual for a construction company, but it was exacerbated by the pandemic. And employees' expectations are changing. So these new generations that are coming in, the millennials and the Gen Zs, you know, they want more collaboration, they want to learn, and they want a framework for what their career can look like, advancement. Gen Zs that entered a new job during the pandemic, especially, were less able to make meaningful connections because they weren't able to see people face to face. And when somebody doesn't feel a connection to the company they were working for, they're not loyal. They take that call from the recruiter, and they'll take a couple extra bucks an hour because they don't feel connected. So who is the face of the organization to these frontline employees that we need to keep? Well, it's the person they are interacting with the most on a day-to-day basis, which hopefully is their supervisor or direct manager. That's who defines the culture for our frontline employees, okay? And we think about who we put in those frontline supervisory or project management roles. It was the super installer. Is a guy that could be trusted to show up every day. So they don't know the job technically, but what do they know about leading people and driving the right culture so that the employees underneath them are more productive and want to stay? So I'm going to talk about 4 things that frontline leaders can do with their employees in order to have a positive impact on culture so you retain your talent. 1, they need to set expectations. 2, they need to be able to do root cause analysis and problem solving. They need to develop their employees underneath them, and they need to track and communicate results. So setting expectations. A lot of people say, hey, you know, it's a plumber. They just need to go install the work today. That's the expectation. They know what they're supposed to do. Or it's a roofer. They just need to get it done, okay? But do they specifically know what they're supposed to get done today while we're sitting here in an 8-hour workday? How many square feet of roofing are they supposed to install? How many feet of wire are they supposed to install? How many devices are they supposed to get installed today? Do they know what that expectation is? And do they, specifically by day would be great, but you could do it by week as well. A real quality set expectation for how much work is supposed to be able to get done. And it must be measurable by the employee and by the manager. Okay? It must be very easy for people to see this. Okay? I work with some clients and they're measuring revenue per person per day. The field technicians don't care about that and they can't see that. Okay? So we want to translate those financial goals that you have in your business to get to the next level into something that drives the key performance of those employees out in the field. Okay? And the most important thing is to get buy-in from the employees. Because if they feel like that expectation just pulled out of thin air, how likelihood are they going to get behind it? Probably not. Okay? So it can be done one of two ways. You can either get a panel of frontline employees to kind of come up with what they think that expectation should be. I would challenge them a little bit to push it a little bit higher, so that the company can reach its financial goals. Or it can be done individually between each manager and each employee in order to drive the behaviors that they need out of that individual. Okay? But I do recommend that there is some transparency of why the business needs to get there. And tying it into what's important for the employee is very important. Like, they want more benefits, they want raises, they want more time off, et cetera. Okay? And my clicker's not working back there, guys. It's just moving the slide around. Okay. So once a manager is really good at setting expectations, that has to be done first, okay? We can't do the rest of these things without this being done correctly, okay? So there's some key takeaway questions that I want you to ask your team when you get back. Don't sit in your hotel room or on the flight home and answer these yourself, okay? Especially if you're, the executive or the owner of the business, okay? I want you to go to your frontline managers, and I want you to ask them this question. How are we communicating daily and weekly expectations to our frontline employees in a way that's measurable, that meets our financial goals, okay? And then how are we determining the quality of that work, all right? And by taking back those questions and sitting down with your team, it's gonna really help you understand where you are now as far as setting good expectations with employees and where you need to go. And then the last question is how are we getting input from the people who are doing the work as far as the expectations and quality goes? Okay. And they're having a lot of problems back there. But I see you guys taking notes. I appreciate that. We're going to give them a second to get it back up. Could you repeat those 3 questions? Yeah, I have a slide with them, too. So first thing that you want to do is you want to ask your team, how are the frontline employees, how are we communicating those expectations on a daily and weekly basis? How we're determining what the quality or setting the expectation for the quality of those activities? And how are we getting input from the people who do the work around both of those things, both how much work is supposed to be done and also the quality of that work? So I'm going to try to go off of memory here. You guys want like 30 more seconds? All right, so the next thing is root cause analysis, because we're going to set these expectations, but what happens when people can't meet it? All right, here's your questions. I'm going to leave that up there for a little bit. And at the end of the session, if you want copies of this, we'll be happy to send the PowerPoint to you so you have a copy of this. Okay, sometimes expectations can't be met, okay? I was working with a manager one time, and he ran an installation department, and his department was losing 2% of gross margin on overall the portfolio of his business, pretty consistently every month, okay? So, have a sit down, what's going on? Why can't we install the work for what it was estimated at? And what do you think he said? The estimator screwed it up. It's the sales department's problem, okay? So I said, all right, so let's go get some data and let's find out if that really is what's going on. So luckily this company that he worked for, they tracked everything. So they could see which estimators did what projects. We could also look at what major installers were on each project. When we started looking at the data, we found out that it wasn't one salesperson, but it was one installer consistently. Any job that one installer was on lost money, lost a lot of money actually. Usually costs more to execute than they sold the work for. So the point is we're going to ask ourselves, what can be causing the problem? Okay? And especially somebody who's ingrained in the business a really long time, they're going to go back to something that's happened in the past, but it may not be what's happening today. So it's really, really important to think about all the possible ideas and then use the data to really determine where to go spend your time. Okay? Because we found out it really wasn't the sales department that was creating the issue. It was a problem with one installer. And that one installer wasn't able to configure the security system that they were installing properly. And they always had to have another installer come back on his job and fix it. Okay? So the root cause was not the sales department screwing up. The root cause is we had an installer that was not competent installing work. Okay? So now we had that data, that manager could go then take action and go work with that installer to either get them up to a competency level that we needed for them to perform or to exit them from the business. Okay? But if we hadn't taken the time to go through the data and make a plan, that guy would have still been losing 2% on all the work that his department put in. It made him look really bad too. So here's kind of a basic problem-solving model. I mean, it's kind of small here, but again, brainstorm with the people doing the work for the possible causes. You know, when we went back and asked all the other installers why they thought it was happening, all of them knew that this guy couldn't do his job. Okay? But the manager didn't really want to see that. Okay? So use the data to help show the real story. Don't rely on gut feelings, especially someone who's been mired in the problem for a long time. It's hard to see. Determine how each possible root cause is impacting the performance. So there's a lot of things that can cause execution issues for a construction company. Lots of different things. And some you'll recognize, but maybe they're not the 30% of the problem. Maybe they're the 5%. We want to go work on the things that are causing the 30% of the problem. Okay? And then have the people who are actually doing the work come up with some solutions. They probably know what's going on. You know, they probably have some ideas on how to address it. And do you think if the workers come up with a solution, how likely are they to implement it? Yeah, right? One of the biggest things with change implementation is the fact nobody actually wants to do it. It's forced change from the top down. This is a great way to have a kind of a bottoms-up approach. Okay? Take action and track progress. So we did with that employee, ended up going to training, had appreciable improvement, and we were able to keep that employee on, and that manager was able to profitably turn work. Okay? So what processes do we have to identify ongoing issues that need to be solved? Right? Again, go ask your frontline managers this question. And how are we involving the people who do the work to help solve the problems? And how do we make sure we're working on root causes of the problems instead of the symptoms? I see that all the time, right? Oh man, we didn't have the right part on the job, so the manager runs up somewhere, grabs it, drives it out, problem solved. Nope, symptom, Band-Aid. Why did that guy not have the right part to begin with? We got to solve the root problems, okay? All right, so once we're able to do that, we have lots of AV problems back there. We need frontline managers to develop their employees, okay? Now, when I talk about development of employees, especially in the construction industry, it's like certifications or it's trade skills or it's specific to what they're doing, their craft. But it's also really important we get these people up to speed on their people skills. And that's often overlooked. It's soft skills, it's not important. But I'm going to tell you, you have employees that can problem solve and can communicate better. It reduces a lot of headaches for that frontline manager, okay? And we want to make sure that when we're developing employees, that the frontline managers are developing the employees towards that employee's long-term goal. Some people just want to be the awesome tech, the great installer, the best PM in the world. Some want to go run the department someday. Some maybe want to open their own company eventually. But if you align their development with the employee's goals, how does that make an employee feel? Valued, okay? They don't leave companies where they feel valued, okay? So these frontline managers need to build these skills in the frontline employees. They need, and this is my suggestion, I didn't pull this out of anywhere, this is just Stephanie's idea. Decision making that's aligned with their role and the company's values. You know, if a tech has to call their manager every time they run into a problem, how much of time of that manager is it taking up? Okay. Providing input about issues, solutions, and ideas for improvement. So if you have a current culture right now where we're not asking for input for employees, you're going to have to build this in them. Create a safe space for them to feel comfortable providing input. Working on communication skills. Oh my gosh, how many problems are caused on a job site due to lack of communication or miscommunication? All right. Working in a diverse environment. This room wouldn't have looked like this 15 years ago at all. Okay, and it's just going to become more and more diverse, which is a good thing, because we need people with different backgrounds and different skills in order to handle the challenges of tomorrow. And dealing with conflict, I don't know what, there is never a job installed that doesn't have conflict, okay? So not just dealing with it, like sweeping it under the rug or avoiding it, but actually making some productive headway out of that conflict, okay? And so key takeaways from this are some questions you can ask your teams, or what expectations do we set with our frontline managers around employee development? Because if we don't expect it, they're not going to do it. And how good would the frontline managers in your organization be at teaching these skills? In other words, are they competent to do it? Okay. All right, last but not least is track and communicate. So there's 3 main touch points that I recommend implementing so long as you have those other 3 things complete. It's really, really easy to push a button and tell people to go do this. And if you don't have those other things right, you will actually trash your culture by having bad interaction between your frontline managers and employees, okay? So just caveat there, all right? So a monthly recognition for a team huddles, and individual one-on-ones. Monthly recognition, virtual or in person. I've seen it done very well both ways. 30 minutes or less. The leader or the frontline manager prepares and presents performance of the team. So we go back to those expectations, but on a team level, what does that look like? How is that team being judged for their performance, and how are they doing against it? You know, calling out good performance of individuals or good team performance, we want to use this time to talk about the good stuff. Okay? And then also, this is a good time for that manager when they're working on reoccurring issues or solving a big problem for the team, so the manager can get an update on what the company or themselves have done and where we're tracking progress towards overcoming those root cause problems. Team huddles, if you're on a big job site, this may be daily with the group, like what are we going to get done today? Or it could be more weekly. Or if you have a lot of people out there doing small jobs, this may be a weekly conversation on a Monday morning. But it's basically review what's working, what's not working from the prior day or the prior week. Review work goals. We're setting those expectations for the upcoming day or upcoming week. And the manager or the supervisor that's having this interaction is taking note of reoccurring issues that are coming up over and over and over again, because those are the symptoms of a root cause problem that needs to be addressed if the team's talking about it on a daily or weekly basis, okay? And then individual one-on-ones. We talked about millennials and Gen Zs that we need to get into the construction industry, okay? They like feedback. They like it a lot, okay? They need it. So I would say monthly is ideal, but maybe quarterly. We do a 45-minute to 60-minute interaction. And this is where we're reviewing those employees' long-term goals, and we're talking about the employee's development towards those goals. And just, you know, this is also a really good time for a manager to ask the killer manager question, which is, how am I doing as your boss? And it's good to have this open dialogue and open conversation, okay? This is not a time to browbeat somebody unless they are really super underperforming, and just calling that out and then working on co-creating a solution on how to get that employee's performance to where it needs to be. All right, so I can hear what you're saying right now. Geez, Stephanie, it's like 30 minutes here and 15 minutes here and 60 minutes here. You're crazy. We don't have that kind of time. And those frontline project managers or supervisors don't have that kind of time, right? Okay, so what if we eliminated some of this time? When 30% of your field organization is turning over every year, how much time are we interviewing, hiring, onboarding, training, fixing because they're new and don't know what they're doing? Okay? How about all those fires that manager's putting out because they never take the time to fix the problem? They just come in, they look at their email, they figure out who's screaming at them, and they just go do it, but they never really accomplish anything. What about that manager or that customer that frontline employee didn't handle right? So now we have a ticked off customer that we have to drive out and handle. Okay? What about doing the work that the frontline employees should be able to do? Right? We're promoting the best tech, so how often are they out on the job site doing their employee's job because they haven't addressed the problem that their team isn't as competent as they need to be? Okay? How about mediating between departments or employees when there's a miscommunication or a conflict? I know when I was down in the weeds in a construction company, I probably spent 30% of my time doing that. It was crazy. I felt like a psychiatrist. And how about managing rework due to miscommunication? Oh, I thought it was supposed to be this way, boss. Now you got to pull it all out and redo it again. Okay? So there's time if we fix the problems. Now initially, is it going to be more time? Absolutely. But when we get a good process down, that frontline manager is now working on the things that they're supposed to be doing. Their employees are doing what they're supposed to be doing. We're building a high performance culture that people want to be a part of because they're winning. So key takeaways from this one. What expectations do we send with frontline managers around consistent touch points with employees? It's really easy to get disconnected when you're working from home. How do we determine the quality of these interactions that build a good culture to retain our good talent? Okay, so when communication between the frontline manager and the workers are good, those interactions are good, we have consistency around those, it's predictable from the employees, they know what to expect. Problems are identified and corrected early. The managers know what they need to work on, right? So those frontline managers should be bubbling up those problems, right? And eventually up to you, you know what are the big rocks to move your business into the next level. Employee engagement and productivity increases, right? How many of those workers that are just completely disengaged? Sorry, I didn't know what to do. I was waiting for you to call me back. You know, versus an engaged employee is like, well, while you were doing that, I took care of this and this and this, waiting for your call. Okay, it's very different. And people like working for your company, and that spreads in the community, right? You know, when people are telling you, hey, come work for my company, they're great, then you know you're making a mark, okay? And guess what? Happy employees treat customers a lot better, and you have happier customers, which means you get more business, which means you can charge more, which makes you more money, which means you can spend more on your employees and develop them, and it's a vicious cycle in the right way, okay? Any questions? Yeah.
Appreciate your presentation, and I live that world too every day. Tell me a little bit about your background. As you know, in large-scale construction, there's always a huge disconnect between the field and the office. Mm-hmm. It's a constant war. So give me some insight to your background on how you meld those two cultures and close that culture gap.
So in my, before I opened Profitability Works, my last role was Director of Transformation for Johnson Controls. And it was my job to break that down from 15,000 field employees to 157 offices in North America. It's all about the communication. You have to have a method for communication up and down, all the way through. So what we found at Johnson Controls specifically was it was that frontline worker to the frontline manager. And then we went back and said, well, why is that so bad? Why is it so bad? And we went back and we found we never spent any money or time developing that frontline manager. We would at a general office or an area, regional manager level. But the company never spent time setting expectations with that frontline manager or giving them the tools or the training in order to do it, okay? Then when they started doing that, what we found was you can't just train people out of it. You have to change the mindset, okay? So if you're 56 years old, and I'm throwing people under the bus, I'm not that much younger than that, but who've been doing this a long time in New York City, running crews of sprinkler installers. You know, they've been taught and managed, do what I'm telling you to do and shut up, okay? And we have to change the mindset that that's not gonna work if we wanna keep employees, okay? That's a great way to turn your workforce union or to have 30% turnover, but it's not a great way. So you gotta start at the mindset of the people. Why is this important? How is it gonna benefit them? What is it gonna do in the long term for both the company, the employees, as well as any other stakeholders that are impacted by that? It's not an easy thing to do, but it can be done. Good question. Any others? All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.